yeah, it was like I wasn't sure exactly what I was going to do next with my career, but I mean, Do was like this incredibly intelligent guy. I get along with him pretty well, and so I thought, yeah, I'll go help him do this. It'll be fun. What's the worst that could happen?
He's charming. I mean, like I've never met him in person. You probably spent a lot of time with him, but I've seen his interviews, and he's witty and he's extremely intelligent. Justin disagrees.
I'm sure he's quite smart. I don't know if I would say charming. I mean, we should pull up some of the memes here, but he always had to, sort of gloat about how he was the richest guy on Twitter and, everyone else was poor. So I don't know if charming is the right word. Maybe charismatic, let's say.
Charismatic. That's what I meant to say.
I think charismatic's probably the right way to put it.
All right, welcome everybody, Steady Lads. We just had a very interesting interview that will follow this segment. We learned a little bit about those like final days of Terra and what's been happening since. It seems like there's a trial coming up soon, extraditions and all this stuff. So we'll get into that for a little bit. But curious before we get into it, Vicky, you didn't talk much during the interview. It seems like you're pretty preoccupied with the trading. What's going on out in the markets today?
Oh yeah. Things have been kind of nuking today after being held up at like 42 for a while.
Is this kind of the GBTC outflows, or what do you actually think is happening?
I think there was like a lot of complicated dynamics going on. I think a lot of fast money was very focused on GBTC and the outflows, and I think a lot of slower money was really focused more on the inflows. So like we saw like a lot of choppy price action, especially like I think it was Tuesday. We saw GBC outflows stop and the discount close, and we saw like an attempted squeeze up that like failed, which like kind of told me that like there was not as much demand as possible, maybe not as much shorts built up. But then now today we're seeing just like the ETF volume just fall off a cliff, and I think it's starting to get to a lot of people's heads that like they're on an island in terms of demand.
Yeah, I think we're kind of looking for support. There will be support. A lot of people are saying that they're eagerly anticipating 38 or so, maybe to start coming back in pretty heavy. Is that how you see it, or you think we're done? You said that a few times we're going to zero. What's happening?
Lose this level and it's lights out.
I don't want to like say anything too hyperbolic. I do think there's like doesn't seem to be any more inflows coming in. I think a lot of funds already fully deployed, and like we've hit like peak attention. So I guess we'll see. I think like we'll have moments of defense at some levels at like 40 and 38, like you mentioned. But yeah, I'm unclear. I could easily see it going all the way back home.
Oh wow! Like, because your prediction was that the ETF was going to be a sell the news, and that's going to be a multi-month top, and maybe that ends up happening, right?
Yeah,
we're seeing some launches coming out, and that's kind of maybe saying a little bit about the market sentiment. Whenever you have hype launches and you see how they actually do compare to expectations. So this week we had Manta, just sort of came out, pretty middle of the road, I would say. It seems to be around like $2 ish, a little bit above. It wasn't a disaster, but not the animal spirits that we've seen with some of the other ones.
Yeah, I think some people got like wrecked because they bridged ETH over and they barely got any Manta tokens as an airdrop. And like once you bridge for the airdrop, your ETH gets converted to Stone, which is like staked ETH. And right now that's depegged. So people bridged over, and like now they have this depegged ETH and they barely got any money, and they're kind of stuck in this thing. And they have to wait like 2 months. I actually bought Stone at a discount, but
is it still a discount?
Yeah, let me check actually. This morning it was like off by 6.5%.
Wow. What the hell? I mean, dude, the Manta perp was like 10% dislocated from spot for like a solid hour. Like people were really clamoring to get out of, the Manta.
Oh yeah, it's off by 6.5% right now.
Is this like DPEG basically like on the one side you have people that are expecting the airdrop to be big and the price of Manta to be big, and on the other side you have people that are just willing to take the ARB?
Yeah, like for me, like I bought the ARB from like 0.90 to 0.93.
Wow,
people and it's depegged because people bridge ETH over for Stone, then they sell Stone at this discount, they bridge back and they bridge again. So they're like betting on this airdrop being worth something, or they just want to get out, and that was a bad trade, according to the current market pricing.
It's like 35% APY, 6.5 for 70 days. It's not bad.
Yeah, it's not bad at all.
You got a
I think
killer
it's
one
a good deal.
at 90. That's a killer trade.
It was like 905, I think. when I got
He
it.
did share it on Steady Lads. We discussed it. I was excited about it, but yeah, I didn't buy any myself. I was focused on Mantle and the Ondo launch too.
Ondo, let's go.
Yeah, we've had an RWA launch, one of the first kind of in that sector. Everyone's been talking about this sector, but we haven't really had a lot of coins apart from Heigi's favorites, the sort of
Mid-curve tokens.
maker trade. But Ondo, I would say, is done pretty well, pretty solid. It's well over 1 billion FDV. We are seeing, some speculation about how's Blast gonna do given this Manta thing. Some people had them in the same category because the same shtick of like, I'm just gonna lock up your ETH, and then look, there's a lot of TVL. Does it say anything about Blast, Taiki?
Yeah, I mean, I'm not really sure how to evaluate Blast. I think it's trading at like $5, which implies an FDV of 5 billion FDV. Oh, actually, no. On ABO, it's at 440. So there's like a 50% correction.
It went down
so if-
because of Manta, right?
Yeah, if Manta's gonna be worth like 2, then I'm not sure like why Blast should be worth like anything anymore. So seems like all the hype is kind of coming back to earth.
Yeah.
We have seen some frothy, I guess, conditions. For example, like I saw this yesterday where Franklin Templeton, in order to, I guess, market their product, they talked about, Ben with hat, like just really trying to, I guess, ride like the meme wave. So
We did have another listing today, so I guess yesterday for people watching, but we did have whiff on Binance. So seems like similar to Bonk, it might just be the top when it gets listed. There is a Coinbase listing maybe still to come. Have you been tracking it, Tiki?
I remember when that guy just bought like $8 million of whiff and just like sets it up 10x. I like immediately bought out for that because I thought like, it was just great marketing. I just had no resolve and I just paper handed. I think I lost like 15K. And like, if I'd only had held, I would have made so much more.
Cool. Well, we'll let you guys enjoy the interview, and then we'll catch you at the end. We have a very killer meme of the week segment for you guys. Welcome to Steady Lads. We have a special guest today. Chris Amani is joining us. He is here to both share stories of cycles past, and I think a lot of people, we're in the middle of a bit of a crazy resurgence, and it's good to remember, I think, some of the mistakes and some of the lessons from the last cycle. And I was a minor character. I think Chris was a little bit more of a major character. And of course, we have some even more major characters that are not with us today. But I think all of us lived through what was, one of the most insane situations of having a top 10 coin disappear overnight, I guess. So we're here to talk about that. As usual, we have my lovely co-host Justin, who we'll show the meme later on. We chest bump. Taiki is with us. We're lucky to have Tiki, even though it's a busy trading day, and of course Chris. Welcome, Chris.
Yeah, thanks. Glad to be here. I can be the human face of what not to do this cycle. Is that the idea?
No. I mean, I think it's like we have to learn from the past so we can get better in the future, right?
No, absolutely. Yeah, no, happy to be here. Especially when I saw that you guys launched this show with the name Steady Lads, I was like, well, I have to be there eventually.
You're right. This is unfortunately, though is not in a great situation right now, but our podcast is named after his kind of meme, and you've dealt with him quite a lot. Maybe can you tell us kind of like, how did you meet Do, and how did you end up in this crazy world?
Yeah, so I guess it was back in 2021. I had just sold my company. My last company was a workforce management B2B SaaS company called Humanity. I sold it, and I was working for the company that bought us for a year. Post that sale, doing kind of like the earnout thing, running product, doing M&A, but getting really deep into crypto. This was like the second cycle that I'd been around for. And I wanted to get involved, right? Like I'd done the SaaS thing for a while, and wanted to go try my hand in a new industry and learn what it was all about. And so I started digging around in places where I could get involved. And I learned about Terra. I've gone back and re-listened to like what drew me into the Terra ecosystem, like what resonated with me originally, and we can get into that later. But learned about Terra. I went to an event. I had booked a ticket out and just kind of showed up at Masari Mainnet, and went to a Terra party that was happening that night. Met Do there, stayed in touch, and then there was a point where he just needed help running Terra because it was too much for him to try to be like the face of Terra. Excuse me, running TFL. For him to be like the face of Terra and also just like run all of the back end stuff that needed to be done to scale TFL as an organization. And so, yeah, it was like I wasn't sure exactly what I was going to do next with my career, but I mean, Do was like this incredibly intelligent guy. I get along with him pretty well. And so I thought, yeah, I'll go help him do this. It'll be fun. What's the worst that could happen?
He's charming. I mean, like I've never met him in person. You probably spent a lot of time with him, but I've seen his interviews, and he's witty and he's extremely intelligent. Justin disagrees. Justin, what do you feel?
I'm sure he's quite smart. I don't know if I would say charming. I mean, we should pull up some of the memes here, but he always had to, sort of gloat about how he was the richest guy on Twitter and, everyone else was poor. So I don't know if charming is the right word. Maybe charismatic, let's say.
Charismatic. That's what I meant to say.
I think charismatic's probably the right way to put it. I mean, like when you listen to him talk, he's incredibly articulate. He can weave together narratives across multiple kind of domains better than anyone I've ever seen. Like his ability to like process and organize and then communicate information is like second to none. But then also, he had this persona that he developed online, which was, I think arrogant. To him, I think he, just my perspective working with him on a day-to-day basis, it always kind of felt like a game, and that like Twitter was a place, like you didn't come to crypto Twitter to have like polite conversations. It was what everyone was doing. I think in some ways he was maybe just a little bit better at it than most people. And so at a certain point, it was funny. At the point when Terra achieved its success, right? Like it was kind of funny with Luna at a $1 billion market cap. At a $40 billion market cap, it was kind of punching down, I think, right? And that might be where it just kind of, it got out of control, right?
Do you feel like, the higher it goes, the more kind of intense you have to get to keep justifying the valuation? Because, if it's 1 billion, you can kind of be a little bit eccentric. But if it's like 40 billion, you have to be a religion, basically.
I mean, I think, yeah, there's a religion aspect to all of this, I think, because none of the valuations match the underlying fundamentals, right? Except for maybe, Bitcoin and Ethereum, right? But so everything that we're doing here relies on you being able to project very far into the future. And so narrative matters a lot more than it does, even in venture. And even in venture, like your chances, like in Web 2 venture, your chances of success are minimal. And you have to be able to see pretty far into the future to see a world where you can get your returns back. It's even more so in crypto. And so narrative matters, personalities matter. I think he developed that. And again, I don't want to speak for Do. There will be a point when he can come back and speak for himself. But he's talked about this before, right? Like he developed that online persona to try to get attention for Terra. And I think it was less about like trying to like crank it up a level as things got bigger and try to get more and more bombastic. I think it was more that once Terra was like, when Terra was a top 100 token, it was getting attention and like, getting people to pay attention to him. When Terra was in the top 6, again, like I said, it felt punching down in some ways, even though it was like the exact same kind of behavior. And I think as Terra got larger and his platform grew, I think he probably regrets not modulating that behavior, is what I would say.
Makes a lot of sense. Yeah, I'm curious, Taiki and Thiki, maybe you guys can chime in. I mean, we're all participants as well during that time. Like, how did you feel about what what's going on with Terra.
Yeah, I mean, for me personally, like I bought Luna after like the May crash, like $7, and I'm like, oh yeah, I mean, it seems like a good play. And then it just like kept going higher, and I kind of just got caught up in like the whole cult mentality. And Chris, you're the CEO, right? Like, what was it like? I remember like the Luna Foundation Guard with like backing Luna with UST with Bitcoin and whatnot. What was it like? I guess setting that up and I guess planning that. I'm sure that it was like a lot of work.
Well, no, I came in after LFG was set up. So I joined TFL about 5 or 6 months before the DPEG. So LFG was almost essentially a done deal. I think they were finalizing it when I came. LFG is an interesting one because, there are these accusations that, and I think when people look back on it, like right now, Do just gets kind of looped in with everyone else, right? Like lumped together with all of the other kind of frauds. And Terra was something altogether different, right? It was an open source protocol. We never took customer money. We didn't misappropriate funds. There's never been any even accusation of that. It was just Terra didn't fit anyone's pattern recognition because things that big in the real world aren't allowed to fail, right? And so you can imagine a world where Silicon Valley Bank could have failed just as quickly, but it's not allowed to, right? When the run on that bank happened. And those are like pretty interesting parallels if you think about it. Under-collateralized, under-collateralized banking systems. One of them was allowed to fail because it's crypto and another one was bailed out. So like I forgot where I was going with that with regards to LFG, but like the idea with LFG was like acknowledging the purpose of LFG was kind of to acknowledge the risk in kind of like the single source of collateralization that was backing UST and to diversify that and hopefully make it more reliable and sustainable. And I think like we all knew, even at TFL, right? Like everywhere, I think everyone in crypto kind of agreed on what the risks associated with this death spiral were for Terra. I remember, like I go back and I've listened to the debate, Jordy, you had with Jose. Like if you listen to that, it's like two people agreeing on the risks and then talking about why their probabilities of it playing out are assigned differently, right? And so we really thought, and Do really thought, like I said, I came in at the end of it. We really thought that like by the time we raised that LFG fund, that was going to provide a really much needed level of security to make this thing even more resilient. And I think maybe even in the community, everyone kind of took a sigh of relief because it's like, okay, now do we not only have like the Terra machine keeping UST pegged, we have this LFG fund. It's an acknowledgement that we needed to diversify the collateral to guard against this depeg risk. But then it ended up not being enough either. I think, ultimately, almost every dollar of it was deployed. And additional money was deployed by TFL as well to defend the peg, but it wasn't.
So no one at the company, you think, had any hunch that this mechanism was like fundamentally broken? Because one of the really interesting things, it's easy to tell in hindsight, but like, so we found out that Do Kwon launched, it's alleged that Do Kwon launched Basis Cash or one of these other rebasing stablecoins. And for folks that don't know, before Terra made this model popular, there were probably like dozens, if not hundreds of projects that did the exact same thing, but just didn't grow to the same scale. And they all collapsed in the exact same way that Terra collapsed. So is it really accurate to say no one saw it coming in your mind? You had thought you had sort of like reached some terminal velocity where Terra could literally turn on the money printer and just print money?
No, I don't think that's how I would describe it. I would say everyone was acutely aware of the risks, right? And I think you could see Do, and there's so much. I've gone back because I've had to do a lot of soul searching through this whole process of being involved in this, right? I got to explain it to my kids. There's so much conversation, and Jordy's conversation was one of them where like all of the risks are just like clearly acknowledged and people assign different probabilities to them. So like, no, I do not think that anyone at TFL thought it was like fundamentally broken from the start. I believe, and I still believe, that Do believed in it 100%. I think most people believe, I think Do was all in it. This was not some kind of elaborate scheme, right? He believed in this.
He clearly given like the consequences that he's faced and how he was definitely all in. He definitely believed it. And
yeah, so but like whether it was fundamentally flawed from the beginning, I think that's a conversation worth having now, right? Like whether anyone should ever try to do it again. I saw someone today saying I would invest in UST part 2 with these different changes, and I was just like, just don't. But anyway, like to answer your question, everyone was kind of aware of the risks. I think by raising the LFG fund, we thought we had mitigated the risks. And I think to a certain extent, we mitigated them, just not enough. Although I think when you talk about like UST in relation to the other ones that had failed, Do was coming at it from a different perspective. And I've gone back and listened to these podcasts where I first learned about Do and about UST. And, the reason, and he articulated this a lot, right? Like the reason they failed in the past is because they were primarily just token incentive based, right? Or based on an interest rate. So they had this circular logic where you pile money in, money comes in fast because you're being promised a return, and then money exits fast when that return disappears. And the thesis behind UST and why it could be different was that it was going to be useful in the real world, right? It was the first like killer use case was a real world payments app in Korea. And the idea behind how to scale it was to continue to increase the number of useful applications for it such that there was always like steady demand and it wasn't based on an interest rate. But what happened is Anchor in some ways, and I'm not saying Anchor is the reason why it didn't fail. It might have been destined to fail from the beginning anyway. I don't know. But when Anchor launched, that 20% interest rate wasn't that interesting for a stable coin, right? But over time, it became more and more as these speculative rates came down, it became more and more interesting. And as Terra got more popular, more money flowed into UST. And it felt like, we weren't able to like diversify those more practical use cases for it in relation to the amount of concentration that now became caught up in this interest rate.
Yeah, it's definitely something that I regret not spending more and more time before everything fell apart, because I had a lot of the pieces in my head, and it's only when it like actually crashed that I put everything aside and I spent a couple days just really analyzing to understand this mechanism and what happened. And I did realize, unfortunately too late, that it is like flawed at the core, and like there's no way it would have been saved. Before, when I done the debate with Jose, like this infamous debate, I thought maybe like there was like a 10-15% chance, 20% that it would be okay, because I thought the Bitcoin reserves might just appreciate, and like that itself would sort of like over collateralize things. But when I dug in deeper, I realized that the hole would just keep growing, and even if Bitcoin kind of saved it for a while and it was over collateralized, at some point there's just like this design hole in it, and it just like sucks out liquidity. And the reason is, whenever like Luna gets minted cheaper and then gets sold more expensive, it increases the hole in the balance sheet, and that just keeps happening, because like this thing will just keep going up, and so the hole will just keep increasing. So I don't think many people I didn't realize that it was that like deeply flawed. And Anchor itself wasn't really the issue; it just sort of made it bigger, more popular. But that wasn't the flaw. Like having 20% yield. I mean, people have like temporary yield boosts all the time. We see it with all kinds of protocols.
I think Anchor just accelerated the scale, right? Because so many people came in, and then it wasn't being used like it was intentionally designed to be used, which is like a savings account for normal people. It turned into like, if you remember Degen Box with MIM, and people were looping it. So now 20% whatever they were able to loop it up to. And then institutions started piling in. And yeah, I mean, like, look, I've thought about this when people talk about like how to design a stable coin, they want it to be, I think of it kind of like, you've heard of like the blockchain scaling dilemma, right? I can't remember like the 3 components of that, but Vitalik's talked about that. I think about like the stablecoin trilemma, that you want it to be stable, you want it to be decentralized, and you want it to be scalable. And UST was an attempt to make it scalable, right? And I just fundamentally don't believe it can be all 3. I don't think they can be all 3. I think like you don't, first and foremost, you don't need a decentralized stablecoin to pay for coffee. You don't need it for the vast majority of the stablecoin use cases. And so it needs to be sturdy. It needs to be resilient. If you want a decentralized stablecoin, it's for handling an edge case.
Just to pick apart that a little more, like, I don't know. I mean, I'd be curious your thoughts looking back on it, but I don't know if it's fair to say that UST was actually decentralized, especially with a lot of the chats coming out in court documents and whatnot, where, like the validators colluded to make determinations about what happened with the chain. That's sort of just a fact. I guess you can argue like where it sits on the spectrum of decentralization, but from my understanding, that's sort of where we stand.
Yeah, it'd be interesting. I don't know what you mean specifically about validators colluding. I mean, validators making decisions together is just kind of how proof of stake works in Cosmos, right? But
There's Telegram chats where I think Do Kwon says to a group of say 20 to 30 validators, we're going to push this update at this time for the chain. Everyone has to vote yes, or we're going to pause the chain for X reason for X period of time. I guess you could argue in some ways maybe 20 to 30 validators it is decentralized because they can sort of choose to not agree with TFL's wishes.
Isn't like whenever Solana was going down, was what were they just kind of Discord and just
well, yeah, look, I mean, like validator coordination to me isn't. Is Cosmos SDK as decentralized as Ethereum? No. So I think decentralization is a scale, is a spectrum, but I don't think like validator coordination really falls. I wouldn't say that takes you all the way off of the decentralization scale. I mean, it puts you right in the middle of the Cosmos decentralization scale, is what I would say. So, we could have like there are plenty of arguments like, is Cosmos decentralized enough? We can have those arguments. I'm probably not even the right person to have those, but I wouldn't say that's like evidence that UST wasn't decentralized. I mean, it ran. I mean, if it wasn't decentralized, they could have shut it down, right? When it was all depegging, but it was allowed to fail.
It could have been shut down though, correct?
If the validators chose to.
Right.
And maybe what you're saying is Do could have gone in there and told them to do it. And because he had that influence and power, it's not decentralized, but he didn't. And so I never saw any evidence that Terra was any less decentralized than any other Cosmos SDK chain, is what I would say.
I think it's like the smallest point that matters or doesn't matter is like the decentralization point. That there's like such bigger kind of fish to fry in this case. I feel like.
I mean, I think I would say on the decentralization, I would say one thing is like LFG was progressively decentralizing. So the assets that were used to defend the peg weren't fully decentralized yet. And I think that's a valid complaint. I mean, it's crypto, right? So you just say progressive decentralization and everyone says, oh, yeah, that's right. It happens over time. So I'll lean on that. But to be fair, that could have been more transparent. We have, just so everyone knows, we got a very reputable third-party consulting firm to go through and audit every single transaction that TFL and LFG made during the PEG defense, because there were accusations that people were just running away with LFG money. So that's available if you look at the LFG Twitter account. I mean, it's boring, but it's there if anyone wants to go see what happened. So we did at least rectify in terms of providing transparency on that.
I agree with you on that point, but I wanted to touch on one last thing that you mentioned earlier. You were talking about how UST grew in part because of this narrative that it was actually used for payments in Korea. But from my understanding, and I mean, I would love for you to clarify here because I'm not fully educated on it, but from my understanding, the court documents allege that was sort of like in whole, mostly a fraud, and that no one was actually using, was it Chai for payments? No one was actually using this thing in a credible way. It was just sort of a narrative that had spun out and sort of grew out of control, where it sounds like Do kept exaggerating how much traction there really was when it was all just wash trading and no one was actually using it.
Yeah, so on that one, maybe we talk a little bit about the upcoming SEC trial, because I can put that in context of that. Like I can't. So we have an SEC trial coming up. One of the reasons I'd reached out to Jordy was because it was coming up. It was supposed to be like a week from Monday, but it got delayed 2 months. So it's going to be in late March now. And one of the reasons I haven't done a lot of podcasts to like explain what happened is because I don't think anyone should actually care what I say about what happens, right? Like the point is we need to wait for this trial to happen, and the evidence will be presented. What I would say is everyone.
Do is expected to be at the trial, right? Like he's expected to come for that.
I don't know. I don't have any insight into like Do's personal stuff. Like there was a motion recently that Do's counsel filed to delay the trial 2 months in case he was extradited to the U.S. I don't know that means he's going to be. I just have no insight into his situation. Maybe he'll be there, maybe he won't. But Terraform Labs is mentioned, so like we're in this. Like as me leading Terraform Labs, I'm still leading like the legal effort for that. And so, it got delayed, unfortunately, because we were looking forward to getting it out. And so, I mean, so as regards Chai, that's one of the accusations, right? The Chai wasn't real. And so I can't litigate that with you right now. But what I would say is I hope people look at the evidence when it's presented in trial and make their own determination on whether Chai was fake or not. Because Yeah, we're not allowed to I'm not allowed to answer these on Twitter or live. TFL just has to sit there and kind of take whatever accusations come at them because we're preparing this legal trial, which is why we're excited for this SEC case to actually kick off as soon as possible.
And can I ask you, have you had the opportunity to talk to Do, or has word gotten back on just how he's doing mentally? Because I don't love what happened with Terra, but I wouldn't wish what's happening to Do on my worst enemy right now. I just couldn't imagine going through that. So, I mean, do you have any indication on how he's doing? Does he think he'll win?
Yeah, so I haven't had those kinds of conversations at all. I exchanged. So when Do was arrested, one thing people don't realize is after the DPEG, he went straight back to work relaunching Terra. And the point of relaunching Terra was that we had this vibrant community, we had this ecosystem. You have to put yourself back in the mindset at the time. It was still layer 1 season. We were we can at least, we might not have the stablecoin, we can compete with at least 80%. We can beat 80-90% of the layer 1s out there that are just kind of launching tokens and have no traction. And so we were can we capture all this energy? Our builders were devastated, right? We had a massive ecosystem. Our community, by the way, our community and our ecosystem doesn't think Do's a villain. I mean, they've essentially turned Do into a martyr.
Yeah.
Because the people who were involved with Terra understood the risk. This was never, they lost money. It took some time to mourn and get over it, and they're back, right? And we're still rebuilding. But well, just to put that in context, he went straight back to work, kind of relaunched the chain. We airdropped the tokens to builders and community members because TFL already had a treasury that we could rebuild with. And the whole point was he was going to get back to work and try to salvage this thing for the builders in the community.
I mean, let's talk about that period because I remember it
Yeah.
quite vividly. I was, already, involved in a lot of Telegram chats and stuff back then. And I remember, the thing about what happened is it happened so suddenly, and Do had made a lot of people a lot of money, and a lot of it was paper. It didn't actually materialize, but some people did cash out money. Infamously, CZ says that they had $4 billion worth of Terra that they never sold, that they just let sit there and eventually evaporated. But there were people, Novo and some very large investors that it all happened so suddenly. I'm sure that they were wanting at least to try to see if something could come out of the ashes, and this Luna 2 thing came out. I know that Jump 3AC, a lot of the big players were in the ecosystem of Luna. So can you tell us kind of a little bit behind the scenes, were these players kind of trying to see if something could come out, or what was everybody sort of thinking around it?
Yeah, so I can't give you too much on individual conversations like that, but I think people were supportive initially until just the onslaught of allegations came on, and then I think we and Do were just too toxic to touch. Whether you believed in Terra and you believed in Do, we never took it that personally. Shit, it was toxic to myself, right? I had trouble coming home and looking my kids in the eyes. I was in Singapore when it all went down, and was in the war room when we relaunched. So I was ashamed of myself, right? And dealing with that kind of stuff. And so I didn't blame anyone else for also not wanting to associate with us. But now, I mean, people abandoned pretty quickly, I think, after you had these absolute dishonest grifters like Fat Man Terra who came out and just started lobbing unfounded allegation after unfounded allegation, and we couldn't respond to them. I mean, we would have to there was a lot going on, right? Inside of TFL, some of the allegations seemed credible. So we're a group of people who could all go find jobs somewhere else. If we were going to stick around, we needed to dig through them ourselves and understand what happened. And so, yeah, I don't know what institutional minds were thinking at that point. I think they were this is one of the biggest collapses we've seen, and we're just going to stay away from it.
Yeah, I mean, the unique thing about the original Terra was that it wasn't generic. It had this stable coin at the middle, which no other ecosystem had it so ingrained, where it was literally part of the code. And so it brought that, and then I guess when you lose that and you try to move into a different direction, it's just another block space, like you said.
Yeah. It's commodity. It's a commodity. It's yeah, well, it's I have a barrel of corn, right? I mean, what am I going to do? How am I going to make that interesting for people, especially given everything that we went through? But look, we have beyond just being a kind of a generic layer 1, we do still have a lot of people who believed in like the Terra mission, and are still like, we have a pretty rabid community. I mean, if you just go to like it's kind of crazy. Like I sent you a link, right? Like go look at like Cosmos developer activity, and it's higher on Terra last week than it was on any other chain in the Cosmos ecosystem. Our spaces are full and vibrant. So we still have this community. We're still building. TFL's been building this entire time, but TFL is going to have to like provide a way out of this. TFL is going to have to like show a new vision or a new reason why Terra is going to be unique. And that's kind of my job, right? Is to see if I can pull that forward. If I can find like a common thread from old Terra to new Terra, that's something that I can actually execute and something that's safe.
And what do you think that is? Do you have any idea?
I do, yeah. Like, I spent a lot of time on this because I had a presentation at Cosmoverse last year where it was kind of like my reintroduction to everyone. And I went back and I like listened to all the reasons why I got involved with Terra in the first place. I went back and listened to all the Do interviews before, things turned into like pure speculation mode. And I go back to this quote that Do had in one of his interviews where he said something along the lines of, I'm one of those people who believes that Wall Street exists to serve Main Street and that capital allocated in a vacuum is meaningless. And, I think what resonated with me about the stable coin, about UST, was just Do's focus on making it actually useful and productive. I don't really live online. I like live in the rural, like in like suburban California, where I spend more time at like swim meets than I do on Twitter. And so like, I still am always looking for like, how am I going to, I still have to explain like why crypto matters to people who don't and will never care what a layer 2 is. Right. And so like when I was searching for a way to get involved in crypto, it was always about like usefulness. And so Chai resonated with me in a meaningful way. Like, okay, this is crypto being used in the real world. And so I think kind of like those principles, while it didn't work out with the stable coin, I think they still apply to building out a crypto ecosystem. Like at some point, we've got to stop launching scaling solutions, and someone has to build an application that my wife will use, right? And I have experience building those types of applications. I've been in a lot of companies that have had applications that have scaled to millions, hundreds of millions of users, Electronic Arts, MongoDB, Singa. My last company had 2 or 3 million users. And so I think that's like an edge that I can bring. I think there's an opportunity both from like the infrastructure that we build into the Terra chain and some of the applications that we can show proof of concept with, to show people a different type of crypto experience, and to build the type of applications that might actually go mainstream. And so that's kind of where we're going with that. That's kind of the thread that connects old Terra to new Terra. I think there's nothing super unique. Everyone's trying to build something that other people will find useful. So that's not like some kind of amazing insight. I think if it's successful, the reason it'll be successful is that we have a specific perspective on how to do it, and where like there are massive like market inefficiencies in terms of like how people are thinking about building and designing applications and protocols. And that we have like kind of a unique perspective to apply to it. So we've already gotten started with that. Like the new Station wallet, I think, is the cleanest and the best in the Cosmos ecosystem. Just by incorporating like basic stuff that like Web 2 applications you would demand in a Web 2 application.
What do you think about the Cosmos ecosystem right now? I mean, we're seeing it kind of having this like incredible resurgence. I didn't believe that so many Cosmos chains could.
Yeah, I mean, I think there are two different things you're seeing, right? One is you're seeing that for specific use cases, having your own app chain makes sense, right? DYDX. I think what you also see in Cosmos is a lot of people launching like their own chains, and they're calling them app chains, and it's like a slight twist. It's like a new chain with a feature, which I don't think you can kind of count on. I think if you're a Cosmos app chain, you have to have a perspective. And you have to be doing something new, and you probably need to be applying something to your app. Like it needs to give you some kind of edge, right? By running on your own app chain. What I would say that I am hyper bullish on is IBC. The amount of work that team has done on IBC to make it a smooth bridging experience. There are like all of these new features that I'm going to bore you to death with, like technical stuff like IBC hooks and packet forwarding middleware, but they just make like the bridging experience seamless. And so, in like our Station wallet, you can initiate multi-hop IBC transactions in one click, right? And you can get consolidated multi-chain, multi-hop transaction histories that actually tell you what the hell you did if you want to look at it 6 months later. In our enterprise application for like DAO management, you can create DAOs cross-chain with one click. You don't have to bridge from place to place. You can vote from anywhere, like wherever your token is in Cosmos, you can vote on your proposals. You can claim rewards anywhere. The IBC infrastructure is...
Do you think that like then like the Cosmos first, do they try to support each other more than like layer twos who are, more trying to compete against each other?
There's Cosmos drama. I mean, I haven't been able to keep up with it the last couple of years. I've been so focused on like saving Terra or trying to rebuild Terra, but I see some of like the kind of picking back and forth between like Optimism and Arbitrum. There's some of that in Cosmos as well, but I think there's definitely a little bit more of a grow the pie mindset in Cosmos. Sometimes there's too much of a grow the pie. Like sometimes at some point we just got to sit down and compete, right? Like I kind of enjoy that competition. Like you build your software, I'll build my software, and let's just go see who likes it better. But yeah, there's definitely I would say a more collaborative approach in Cosmos. But I think if you're not looking at and I mean, this is me, like I'm not really pumping my bags. We don't have tokens with these products, and they don't provide any direct utility to Luna. But like, if you look at some of the stuff that's being built on top of IBC, you can see a future where it's just the best infrastructure for bridging and for like cross-chain application interaction. So that's my bull case for Cosmos. So that's what I'm most excited about.
Yeah, I'm also a fan of the Cosmos ecosystem. I just think that the most of the teams building there, they're like super smart, but they don't really have, it's like a high IQ, low EQ type of situation where they don't really know how to like talk to like regular people. And then it's kind of hard to understand, why these teams are building what they're building. But they've been building throughout the bear market, and now they're starting to launch tokens, and that's kind of like the bull case.
I think, look, I mean, I think crypto generally needs more product people with like Web 2 product management experience. I think there are a ton of brilliant finance minds. I think there are a ton of brilliant like cryptographers and a ton of brilliant engineers. My sense is there aren't a lot of people who have built products at scale. And by scale, I mean built products that millions of people have used before and iterated. And I think like this is one of the reasons why I think there's like an advantage that I can take advantage of is there's also just incentives get screwed up, right? Like I think they're like people confuse protocols with applications and vice versa. And every time I see an application that I kind of like, I see them launch a token. I'm just licking my chops because I know I can outcompete them. Because the minute they launch that token, they've got a fake decentralization, and I'm going to be able to out execute them. And so we're not doing a ton. Like our protocol is the Terra blockchain. We're not doing a bunch of like DeFi development ourselves, but what we are doing is building like an application layer on top of those protocols that are building on Terra that provide like a different level of UX UI. And so that's kind of the layer that we want to attack in the stack.
How much do you keep track of some of this drama between like the classic and the non-classic? Some people are very nostalgic. They want to just repeg the original stuff. Burn tokens.
I track it because I can't go on the internet without being swarmed. Like my Twitter mentions are all from that community as well. So yeah, the background there is that like we rebranded the old Terra to Terra Classic and then the old Luna to Luna Classic, which is LONC. So just to clarify, if you see Terra or you see Luna right now, you're looking at V2. You're looking at the one that we launched after the DPEG. If you're hearing about LONC or Terra Classic or even some crazy scheme to repeg UST, which I hope they're actually successful with, right? That would work out well for me personally. But that's the old Terra Classic. And what I would say is like the way I think about that, that's not necessarily like a lot of old OG Terra people that like stuck around to like save the old chain. That's a kind of like a brand new community that sprung up around an opportunity to do something. So, the old community that I know, like the people that I was in Telegram with and Discord and were at events with, those are all like, they've all transitioned over to the new chain. But this other one's still out there and we've got like some emotional connection to them and we try to be helpful and we treat them just like we would treat any other Cosmos Layer 1. And so I hope they're successful. Our apps will always launch there.
I remember like when the price was crashing, there was so many Lunas being printed. I mean, just the zeros. I remember like on FTX, just like it just kept going and going, and they just kept adding like decimals on like the price because it was like below $1, and then, they just had to add it. And I remember like I was trying to stay up and bottom ticket because I thought that even though this thing was clearly spiraling to zero, I was like, screw it, I'll put 10K at like the bottom tick. So I waited, and it was like trading between like 0.00025, like 50 and 75, and it wasn't like filling me at like 25. So I go to sleep, and unfortunately, like it never really got that full last tick. It went to that second tick, and then I woke up. It had literally like 50x or 100x,
Oh my God.
which was a bit annoying. But like you said, the community that owns like those gazillions of Lunas is those people who were like just kind of shitcoin trading it, right?
I think so. No, I mean, it depends. There are factions, right? And I won't get too deep into it because I can't keep up with it. But like, there are factions. There are people with good intentions trying. Well, they all probably have good intentions. Some people are just shitcoining it. There are people who are like building that chain and implementing new modules on Terra Classic and expect to build an ecosystem around it. And so we'll see if they'll be successful. But yeah, there's definitely that point. I mean, I was sitting there too. I was sitting in the lobby of the hotel. We had an offsite planned for the day of the DPEG. So when it was happening, we were all there together, like in this conference room, watching it go down. And like you said, they just kept adding zeros in front of it, and I almost like expected it, like on a calculator where they just put like the exponential thing. They just put like the E16 at some point. But yeah, it spiraled pretty hard, pretty fast.
So as we were discussing, I just pulled it up, and really interesting to note, Luna Classic, Lunk or Lunk, actually has a higher both market cap and FDV than the real Luna, the new Luna. Should we read into that at all? Like, what is that because of the meme aspect?
I don't know. Yeah, I don't know how to explain that. I think maybe yeah. I mean, maybe that's like a community evaluation of the job I'm doing and trying to resurrect Terra. I don't know. But yeah, I don't know how to. It's been larger since the moment we relaunched.
So will you be at the SEC trial whenever that happens? Will you be there in New York?
Yeah, I'll definitely be there. It's a big moment for us. So I don't know if I'll be participating, but I'll be in New York. As a representative of TFL.
Can you tell us like what's at stake in this trial? I mean, obviously, Do himself has separate trials, or is this his trial, or like, how does it exactly work?
Yeah, so I can talk about like kind of there are like, I would say there are kind of like 4 key things at this trial to keep an eye on. First and foremost, let's say there are 3, and then one of them I would break into 2 different categories. The SEC brought 3 charges against TFL and Do. They brought securities violation, so were Mirror, Luna, and UST securities. I say you can break one of them up into 2 because I think you can have a different conversation around Luna and Mirror than you would have around UST being a security. And I think a lot of people in crypto would quibble with any of them being securities, but specifically with stablecoins being securities. So that was ruled on in summary judgment. So that's not going to go to trial. So that's just done. Those were marked as security. So if you saw Terraform Labs lost on the security sayings, that's what that means.
What is the penalty for that?
I don't know yet. We'll find out. Yeah. That'll come after the main trial. And then so what will be the trial that's coming up in March that we hope people pay attention to is the fraud allegations. And there are two allegations of fraud, roughly, right? One of them is just misrepresentation of how UST worked and how Terra worked. And the other one is misrepresentation around Chai, whether Chai used the blockchain or not. And so, we think there's not merit to both of those fraud allegations, but it's, again, like I don't expect anyone to trust me. But there will be a vast amount of evidence presented at the trial, I'm sure. And so people will be able to kind of finally see once and for all whether, make up their own mind about if there were misrepresentations or not. But yeah, that's coming up end of March. So we're looking forward to finally having our day in court.
Before we sign off, I do just have to say, like, I think we should all be calling this out. I mean, Chris, I have to say, as someone that's been like trying to build in this space and work on a startup and try to go after product market fit, I mean, I have to give a ton of credit to you for, one, staying with the Terra community. I mean, I can only imagine how many people were like considering leaving, depressed, doubting it, didn't know how to talk to their friends and family. I mean, even just the shame of being in crypto when FTX blew up and not having any affiliation to FTX was absolutely brutal. And I can only imagine what it was like for you. So I have to like tip my hat to you. That's incredibly impressive that you stuck with it. And I also think it's amazing that you're trying to do something important with Terra now. So, you know, I have give a lot of credit to you for coming on and sharing with us your thoughts and sticking with it. It's pretty impressive. So thank you.
Yeah, man. I appreciate that. You know, I mean, it's not just me, it's our community. It's a pretty resilient group. Our team at TFL, we still have 20 people from before the DPAG at TFL, which I think not many people would imagine. And they're building fun stuff. You might not like it, but if you want to check it out, you know, you can always follow our Twitter feed for what's going on. I appreciate you guys having me on. It's good to catch up. I've like I said, I wanted to do this since I saw Steady Lads is the name of the YouTube. So I'm glad we were able to make it happen.
Yeah, hopefully we can have you on in a few years when you guys are a huge success and there's been like a huge comeback story and everyone's, you know, excited to talk about Terra again.
Yeah, sounds good. Appreciate it.
Thank you so much for coming, Chris. Good to chat. And I think the insights are going to be very valuable for everybody listening.
Yep, sounds good. Take care. Cheers, guys.
All right, guys. So to finish off the episode, we have a very special meme of the week. As you might know, the Meth and MethLab have been hosting a huge meme competition on Twitter with over 50K in prizes. So 20 Meth. It's quite a large prize. We've had over like 1,200 entries. So you guys have been hilarious. Justin is a main character in a good amount of them. So we'll go through 8 of our favorites. You guys can enjoy. So let's kick off, Taiki.
Yeah, so let me just play this 15-second video. Hopefully you can hear the audio. So that was fun. That was fun.
This one is just killer. I mean, you have like CZ with Ethereum blue eyes and just perfect. Even the song, the guy's like double dose, sounds like double dose. It's it's definitely a top 10 meme. So this will be winning a large prize. All right, let's go through the next ones.
This one.
Nice to meet you, John.
My favorite, I think.
Here, Tensio. All right. Nice to meet you. Jerome Smith. Come on, brother. What's up, man? You know this.
Keith Williamson.
Nice to meet you.
Mary.
All right. Come on. Feel that?
Emily George.
All right. Nice to meet
Daryl Stokes.
you. Hello. What's up, fam? How you doing? Never forget about that. 'Cause that's all we got. Come on.
Forget about that, Taiki.
There he is. All right, very good to meet you.
Here we go. Like the sweat, sir.
Gensler, negative APR.
That's hilarious.
This is possibly going to win the grand prize. So we'll have the judges decide. But this is incredible. So Tom, bravo.
Because we're all in it. How could we not love it?
It's amazing. You got so many nice references. Let's go to the next one.
What do you think?
Can you maximize the screen, maybe?
Nice. It's very cool, Bateman, but that's nothing. What do you think? Nice. But wait, you ain't seen none of it yet.
Hope that's not me. Is that me?
That was you.
That's not good. I like the Justin more.
Very nice. Let's see Paul Balance.
This is a punch.
Why did they look like that?
Wait, is that Thicky?
Oh, that's Jordy in the middle.
But Thicky, you're on the left, and I'm on the right, I think.
Oh my God.
Wait, who is that?
What do you think?
Is that me?
Alex.
Oh, there I am.
There you
You
go.
look like Justin's son there.
Not the best AI ever, but I would say the effort is good enough that it's not gonna win the total prize, but it's maybe good enough to crack the top 10. So
What is the grand prize?
grand prize is like 6 Meth, so it's like
Are you serious?
yeah. It's
Are you
huge.
serious? What the
Yeah,
fuck?
Yeah, it's not a joke.
All right, next one.
Yeah.
Get on the ark! Everyone on the ark now!
I think we should get on the ark.
I agree. I think we should get on the arc also.
I'm cold, I'm wet, I'm going home.
This last lockup ending. All that Ethereum free again.
That's Irene. That's Irene, dog.
Oh, that's you, Vicky.
Yeah, Vicky. That's Ben from Bygate.
Well, I think that was Irene. That's me.
There we go. You're just so pretty, Vicky. What can I
Yeah, that was a good one. All right.
Well, we have a few that are just art, very well designed.
This is a rich contest.
It is.
Next one is this.
Yeah.
One of the mistakes.
Yes, both Leonese.
I love this guy.
He's just such a good artist as well. Very solid. Worthy of a top 10.
We saw this last time.
This might be my favorite due to simplicity.
Yeah, a very good one. We have another simple one right after. Classic, hilarious. It's just the look on Justin's face.
Yeah,
This one.
I look like a predator there. We gotta go to the next one, Taiki. We gotta move this one along.
I think we gotta give it to the that video, the Key and Peele one.
Yeah, I really love the Key and Peele one.
The Key and Peele one where he's like dapping everyone up.
The black president one.
Yeah.
Yeah. I have a feeling that is very likely to win the top prize. So we'll have a quick voting from the judges. But let's put it up one more time and let's put full screen and let's end the episode with this. And we'll see you guys next week.
See you next week. Bye, everybody.
Ian Roberts. Nice to meet you. Here, Tensio. All right. Nice to meet you. Jerome Smith.
Who is that? Is that Danny Sesto?
No, that's Zemian.
Max. Keith Williamson. Nice
Oh, okay.
Period. Come on.
Is that the logo for the MethLab?
Emily George.
No, but it's one of the memes.
Nice to meet you. Daryl Stokes.
Poor Lido.
How you doing? Never forget about that. That's all we got. Oh, there he is. No.
All right, good to meet you. Here we go. Right this way, sir.
I think the Gary Gans are just very good. Really solid.
I hope you guys enjoyed this segment and we'll see you next week. Take care.
Yeah. Take care, guys. Later.